Well, we now have the battery strap or hold down strap on. This is 1-inch webbing. It's a little thinner than what we used on the fuel tank. I think we used 1.5 inches on the fuel tank, but it is officially strapped down, connected to our little chromed bronze clips or straps, one on each side and a quick disconnect buckle in the center. So the battery's officially done. So what I was working on today is fairing the front half of this bow, to get planking to wrap over it nice and smooth. One thing I didn't want was a center ridge. I didn't want this ply to come up and make an obvious ridge. I want it to look just nice and smooth all the way across the deck, no ridge in the center. So I took my my plane, low angle plane, and I drew my center line down the center strong back or batten for the deck, and I started angling each side until the ply wrapped on here and looked pretty good, but then it was still really steep in the center. Not so bad up here from about the dash to frame 5.5. It's a nice round curve, but from about 5.5 forward, it started to get kind of teepee looking in the center. So what I did was, after I got that faired off at an angle on both sides so that the plank laid on there pretty good, then I took my jack plane again and I started running down the center of that and taking that ridge off. You can see where I've made some pencil marks out here. So I started taking that ridge down until I got very close to each edge. And then I took a piece of scrap over here and just kind of stretched it over the top, looking at clearance on my battens, looking at how the rounded portion of the bow looked, and it looked really nice. And now I think I've got it so that when this side and this side are on, it'll be just one nice smooth curve all the way across the deck, no ridge in the bow. And the main reason I did that was because you can see I've just drawn some arbitrary lines on this thing to simulate kind of what the plank deck will look like. There'll be roughly an 8-inch wide cover board all the way down, and then this is half of what will be an 8-inch wide king plank all the way down. So I just drew these lines on here to simulate it. This is not the ply that I'll be using for my sub deck, but I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what I'm thinking, at least for the deck. And I won't know if this will work out until I get the sub deck and get it planked up to the dash, and then I can lay out my pattern same as I did with the floor to make sure it's going to end with a decently wide plank out here on each side. So again, this is just simulated, but you kind of get an idea of how it'll be planked. I used the nails just temporarily to hold everything down tight after I got it clamped, to check to see how my shear line out here flowed, to make sure there were no obvious dips or anything that needed to be faired. I had to fair these battens from about 5.5 forward to where they butt into the shear. A little bit on the outside, I had to kind of fair them at an angle because it was leaving a little gap when I'd wrap the planking or the ply over the top of it. I used this chunk just as a strong back to keep even support, so I didn't have to put 20 clamps down the thing. Basically, I had this actually flipped over on this side when I drew this shear line on the bottom of it. And then just to check symmetry on the boat, I just flipped it over, basically, clamped it in place. And there's a 1/4-inch gap back here, and that 1/4-inch gap is symmetrical all the way forward. So that tells me that as far as the left and right half being symmetrical, they're really, really close, which is good. So that's what I'm working on now. Again, this is not my sub deck. It's just a piece I'm using to check my fairing on everything, and I think we're pretty good on the fairing right now. I'm pretty positive from the dash back, it's really, really close. When I go to plank that, I'll probably have to do a little bit of adjustments with the jack plane back there, but this bow area is where the most attention was needed. And I think I've got it pretty well ready for deck planking. Again, I can't do the deck planking until I pull the floorboards out and encapsulate, and then some sort of clear coat over all of that stuff in there. But just kind of prepping for the deck planking. Making fantastic progress. I think it's going to look awesome. I almost contemplated taking another chunk of ply and cutting it out and doing this side too, just to kind of see what it would look like, but you get the idea anyhow. These nails, again, they're just tapped in there lightly enough to hold everything down to check that shear gap. And, oh, let's see if we can get down here. You know, it looks like that all the way down. Just a really, really good fit. So, it's symmetrical. The fairing looks really nice. It should have a nice rounded top, no ridge line down the center. And I think I said this already, but when I do that 8-inch wide king plank down the center, I don't want it to be ridged. I want it just to be a nice smooth curve all the way across. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've seen plenty of zips that did have kind of a sharp ridge line down the center. Just with the style of decking I want to do, that's not the look I was going for. These are just arbitrary widths. It's a 2-inch wide plank with a 1/4-inch gap. Whether or not that's actually going to work, I won't know again until I get the sub deck all on. And this is not the correct material for my sub decking. This is just a piece of, it is marine ply, but it's not Hydrotech or Meranti like the rest of the boat skinned in. Even though you would never see this, I'm still going to do it all matching Hydrotech. So, somebody took a bite out of it. Anyhow, so what I'll do is I'll get this, I'll get the whole thing subdecked, and then I'll come back and start laying 1/4-inch thick African mahogany over this area. It'll get laminated to it, the king plank down the center, then all of these 2-inch wide ones will get planks laminated to the top of this. And then this gap here, I will probably fill with colored epoxy instead of doing like a caulking, because again, I want to cover the entire top deck and outsides of the boat with automotive clear. And I guess I could epoxy coat everything, sand it all, auto clear it, and then come back and caulk the seams. But I think longevity wise, I think it would look better and be a more solid deck if I used thickened colored epoxy to do these white stripes instead of caulking. And I think I can make it look a little cleaner too, but there it is. Making fantastic progress. This thing's gonna be bad ace. Well, tonight I sanded the bottom of the motor well and did a third coat of epoxy, trying to fill in some of those cracks and low spots in between the joints of the herringbone pattern. And it looks like to me it's going to need another coat to try to fill them more yet. You can still see, just like before, defining lines around the little pieces. It's not as bad. We're filling it up with each coat, but it's definitely going to take another. Making good progress. Alright, well, tonight I am installing my cup holders. These are stainless steel cup holders. I found them on Amazon. They were about $6 a piece. I ordered 4 of them, but for the moment I can only put 3 in, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's the other cup holder down here. And what I did basically is I put the dead center of the cup holder right in line with the edge of my seat. I then took the distance from outside here of my armrest over to the hull. I minused a 1/2 inch from that because I'm going to have my kick panel in here with the material over the top. So I gave a 1/2 inch for the thickness of that. And then I split whatever that difference was. So this overall minus a 1/2 inch, then I split that in the middle, and that's how I got my position, port starboard on it. But as far as lining up, I lined them up just dead even with the edge of this seat right here. And on the front, you can see I've started drilling this hole. You can see I used a piece of tape on here to transfer my lines to give me a starting point. These ones here on the rear went in at a little bit of an angle. Let me pull this out. And it's kind of hard to see, but that hole is actually angled, and it's angled kind of like this. And the reason it's angled like that is because basically if I wanted to drill it straight, it was right in line with this carling. So I had to drill it at a bit of an angle. but it really didn't make any kind of difference whatsoever. When the holders down in there, or I'm sorry, the cup holders down in there, it fits good and snug. There's, I mean, just maybe a 30-second of wobble in it or so. But because of the trim ring, you can't see that hole and that it's at a slight angle. It sits perfectly flat on there. Again, you can see all the bumps in this. I need to sand this and do my clear in here, but anyhow, so that's where we are. The rear seat is done. The front seat, I'm drilling this one up here. Same location, dead center, or of the seat at least, the center of the cup holder. Hopefully you can see that. Right even with the front lip of my seat base or seat bottom. And I did the same thing up here as far as measuring this distance over to the side of the hull, minusing a 1/2 inch, and then splitting it, and that's my middle mark. So I can't put the fourth one in on this side because my forward reverse throttle control is going to be mounted on this armrest. And until I get that mounted and comfy, I won't know where or if I'll put a cup holder back in here. So that's where we are tonight, mounting cup holders. It's coming right along, looking beautiful. So we now have the port front cockpit cup holder installed. Just finished drilling that hole, vacuumed up all the sawdust chips. And I am still, again, like I mentioned, you know, in the earlier portion here, I'm still using that same adjustable circle cutter that I bought forever ago when I was doing the dash. You know, I've drilled 6, I think, let's see, yeah, I believe 6 holes, 6 different sized holes so far in this boat build. There's, obviously there was 2 for these 2 gauges, which are the same, 2 holes here, which are the same size. But there's 2 different sizes, a 3rd for there, a 4th for there, a 5th for the armrest, 6 over here for the top of the sub box. I've just used that thing over and over and over again. And again, you know, it only cost me like 15, 16 bucks for that adjustable circle cutter. I think it's more than paid for itself. It's still going strong. I have sharpened the cutter a few times, but you know, I have no idea what, if you were to buy individual hole saws for all of these, what that would have cost you. You know, let's say they're minimum 20 bucks, you know, you're looking at $100 worth of hole saws, and you still would not have gotten as good of a fit as I can dial. I mean, you can dial this thing down to within a few thousandths, so everything fits nice and snug. There's no jiggle or wobble, you know. I just think it's a good buy. It's relatively inexpensive, and it just keeps going. It's going strong. So 3 of the 4 cup holders are in. Again, we can't do this one up here until I get my throttle forward reverse in. Here's a look. Hopefully you can see the skewed little biscuit that I took out of there. You can see how the sides are drilled at an angle. These are out of the rear cockpit. There's another one right here. Hopefully you can see how skewed that hole is. But that's how I had to drill it, and it didn't seem to make any real big difference. I did have to take my 4-in-1 file here and just clean up the very edge of the hole so it would drop in easily. So I didn't have to force them in. But so we're gonna have to encapsulate that fresh wood underneath these. If I pull this guy out, I'll have to encapsulate the hole, and I'll probably install them with some of that 3M 5200, just like I did on the Pedo pickup, that black sealant. I think what I'll do is, after they're encapsulated, I'll probably run a bead of it right around this area here, all the way around, and then just drop the cups in, let it cure up. So they'll be, you know, semi-removable if you really had to, but they won't come falling out when you're going down the freeway. So, making good progress. Well, it's officially January 1st, 2017, New Year's Day. Happy New Year's to everyone. If you're watching this video, congratulations, you survived. For the month of December 2016, we went up 5¼ hours. We put in a ½ hour for miscellaneous down here at the bottom. We put in 2 hours in the fairing. So that brings our fairing up to 33.5. We went up 1½ hours on the epoxy coat, so that brings us up to 41 hours total. We went up, what else? Oh, sorry, there's another hour and a quarter for miscellaneous. So anyhow, that brings our miscellaneous up to 9 1/4. Total invested this month, $34.72, not a whole lot. And basically that was the 4 cup holders, the stainless cup holders, and then some epoxy brushes and a pan and things like that. So anyhow, 5 1/4 hours brings us up to 578.5 hours into the Zip, and $34.72 brings us up to $6,686.50 invested in the Zip. So not a whole lot of show, unfortunately. Again, time of year, Christmas, so not a lot of hours and not a lot of dollars went into the Zip again this month, but or last month, December. But coming up on tax time again, so with any luck we can dump in a whole bunch more money here in another month or so. But thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll catch you guys on the next update of building the Zip.